And do you have any drawings from when you were a kid that you could share?
No.
Okay. So I'm with my guest, Graham Nolan, creator of Monster Island, series The Chenille, um, Alien Alamo, and Joe Frankenstein are his current indie projects. And let me pull up real quick. I'm just going to exit this page so the show. I'm going to pull up your campaign so you can talk about it a little bit before we get going too far into the interview.
Okay, sure.
Up. All right. So, Escape from Monster Island is the third installment in the Monster Island series.
Hmm.
And do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Um, as you mentioned, this is a trilogy, and so this
Mhm.
is the third and final part of the Monster Island series. The first one was Monster Island, then Return to Monster Island, and now Escape from Monster Island. In the last issue, our the island we find out has been sabotaged by these characters called the Anarchons, and they were in the previous issue, and they have to get this rare element, Sigadium, that they need to power their warp field on the island. And so they go down to this planetoid, this mining planetoid to get the Sigadium, but not as everything isn't as it seems on that planet. And these creatures that live there lure space travelers to this place, and then they capture them and put them in death arenas and bet on them. They're gamblers. It's a gambling society. And so our heroes have to get the Sigadium so they can escape from Monster Island, but they also got to survive the death arena. Um, it sounds more violent and darker than it is because these Monster Island books are truly high adventure and fun, with a lot of humor, romance, all that kind of stuff thrown into it. Um, the concept of Monster Island came to me many years ago, 1998, in fact, when I wanted to do an all ages comic, something that adults could read, but kids could read and enjoy on a separate level. And so I looked to the great adventure strips that were during the golden age of comic strips, because everybody in America used to read those. I mean, President Roosevelt used to read Terry and the Pirates in his fireside chat to America. So people were reading that kind of stuff, but kids were reading it too. So that's the kind of comic I was trying to do. One that's all ages, but without the pejorative implications that term has. And so that's
You okay? You froze for a second.
Oh, I was going to say you froze.
We might have both froze. And
So,
yeah, you were just finishing up talk about the all ages and how it's a pejorative term, and then
oh, that's when I froze. Oh,
uh,
okay. And
just a little bit after that.
yeah, all I was saying was in closing it out, saying that yeah, that's basically what Monster Island is about. You know.
And I saw, I forgot where I saw it, but you mentioned that you had did it so your daughters could read comics.
Yes. At the time, I was under exclusive contract to DC Comics, and they used to send us everything that they published every month. So I'd get
Okay.
this giant box of everything from their hardcovers to their floppies. And my daughters are young, and I couldn't give them the comics that my mom used to be able to get for me, Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, because at that time, they were starting to get much more sexualized, the female characters,
Mhm.
and violence too. And I didn't want them reading that kind of stuff at that age.
And that
So
was in like the 90s period
Yeah,
or
it was 1990. Oh, I was probably 1997 is when I
mm.
started the work on it, and the book was published in like 1998.
Do you think it was because of what was going on in Image that kind of bled into the DC and
Oh,
Marvel or
absolutely. I think so. Yeah, yeah.
okay. And then was that the first story you were writing, or did you always have a plan that you wanted to create your own stories eventually?
No, I had done stuff. Trying to think of the timeline, whether so this was 98. I can't remember if I had done Superman the Odyssey yet. No, I hadn't, because I went back and I wrote Superman the Odyssey after this for DC, and I had co-plotted Batman Devil's Advocate, the graphic novel, with Chuck prior to this, and I'd written some short stories for DC. So my goal was always to start to transition in as a writer, um, uh, but I ended up doing that on my own.
Oh, okay. And was that because of the political sphere of DC was changing, or it was just that they weren't open to new ideas for characters
You
and
mean as far as like getting in as a writer?
hmm
Um, no, at that point it wasn't a political thing. I think it was just a question of they tend to pigeonhole you. You're an
yeah.
artist, you're a writer, and you have to prove yourself to them. So I think that's why I started off with some short stories, because I started doing these tales from the Batcave,
Okay.
which I was going to be a bunch of these that we would collect into a book, but we never did more than two, because then there were changes up at DC, editorial
Mhm.
changes, people were leaving or getting fired, and the market was starting to collapse.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm just writing down that title so I can check it out later. And
Which title?
the Tales of the Batcave.
Oh yeah, they appeared in uh it was like a Batman special. Uh, I can't remember the name of the comic that the stories appeared in. But I remember the stories. The first one I wrote was Dinosaur Island, and then about how Batman got the giant dinosaur, and then the Penny Plunderer, how Batman got the giant penny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was taking like some of those. The idea was to take the famous stuff first, the stuff that always appears
hmm
in the trophy room, and tell a modern story about it, maybe based upon, what the stories that initiated them in the first place, but modernize it and turn it around. And then after that, then to create trophies for the trophy room and just have whole stories and say, well, this is how we got this trophy, even though, you haven't seen it yet, but then we could put it in a trophy room.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
And then, um, like when I looked you up I took a look at Wikipedia because it sometimes lists your all the books you've worked on. I found that was Aaron, so I could check him out on this site called readallcomics.com to kind of get a taste for like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I saw that there was the Phantom and it said Graham Nolan, the Phantom. So
hmm
was that one that you wrote and drew, or was there other people working on it?
Well, if it was a comic book of the Phantom, then that was one that I wrote for Egmont, which is the Swedish publisher of the Phantom. I did some painted covers for them as well. Um,
Mm.
uh, but most of my Phantom work was done for King Features Syndicate because I was the illustrator of the Phantom Sunday comic strip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for 6 years, and I became the first person to write and illustrate a Phantom Sunday strip.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
Was that when you got your Inkpot award, or did that happen later?
that was later. I got the ink pot in 2014 or 2016. I can't remember.
And was it a lifetime achievement award or did it?
Yeah, that's what the Inkpot pretty much is. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
a lifetime achievement award. They don't tell you you're getting it. So like they just tell you, they invite you to be a special guest at San Diego Comic Con, and they invited me and Chuck Dixon and Kelly Jones and uh, I forget who else it was. It was Brian. Uh, there was somebody else too who was a special guest that year. And then we gave at a panel that we were supposed to be talking about the Nightfall storyline that Denny O'Neil was hosting. That's when they announced that they were giving us this award, and I looked at Kelly and looked at Chuck, and they're looking at each other, and we're like, "What the hell is this?" We had
Like
no idea, so it was fun.
that's real cool.
It was very cool, yeah. And to get it presented by Denny O'Neil was very cool.
Yeah, I had heard about like the Will Eisner Awards, but I never heard about the Ink Pot. But then again, I'm not.
The Eisners are given out at the those are I think the yeah, I think the I can't remember what the Eisners are for, if it's for a specific project or not. I'm not sure if it is.
Yeah, I guess I could look it up later. Um,
I never got one, so I don't know.
so so you worked in comics for 41 years when you, is that just in the industry itself or
Mhm.
including your formal education at the Kubert School?
Well, that's when 1983 was when I made my first professional comic book sale. I sold two stories to uh, uh, New Talent Showcase for DC Comics. So that's the start. I was still at the Kubert School when I did that because the editor of the book was one of my instructors, and he bought two of my classroom assignments for it.
Oh, that's
Uh,
really cool.
so that was my first professional sale. So that's when I can say that's when I was first, my first pro work. Um, but then it was sporadic for a few years as I worked in advertising to keep the lights on, and would go in with samples and stuff. And then eventually I got in at Eclipse Comics and did a lot of work for them during the mid '80s, and then transitioned over to DC again. And then I stayed at DC for quite a few years for the bulk of my career, and then went over to Marvel and did a bunch of stuff there too.
So did you complete your education at the Kubert School? And what?
No, no, it was a 3-year program then.
Okay.
And I went 1 year, ran out of money and went
Mm,
to community college at home. Came back for a second year, ran out of money again. But at that point, I had sharpened my skills enough that I was starting to get work. And
mm,
again, I was able to work in advertising for a little bit as I developed those skills a little bit better. So instead of going back for the third year, I just learned on the job.
very cool. And then um, what made you decide to go to that school in the first place? Was it just by finding comics and then learning about the school from like high school or
Well,
uh,
at that point, the school had only been open since 1978, and we're talking 1981.
oh,
Uh,
okay.
so they'd only been open a few years, but they had advertisements in comic books, and of course, I knew who Joe Kubert was, legend. And I was like, wow, this is like the perfect school for me, because this is what I've wanted to do since I was 12 years old. You know, I thought about going to, a traditional college. All my buddies were going to the University of Florida, and I ended up applying there late, but I got rejected because, I was my application was way too late, and my grades were very art. They were great grades, but they were for art related subjects and stuff.
Yeah.
My calculus was not so great.
Mm. Uh, uh, And then so I know like Andy went to the Cubert school, but that was much later, so you guys
Yeah.
never met
Mm-mm.
till like did you guys only meet once CG happened, or did you meet him like prior to that?
Oh no, I met Andy long before that. His teacher and mentor was Bart Sears, and Bart was a classmate of mine.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, I knew Bart for many, many, many years, and when we were students together. And then I met Andy through Bart.
Okay. That's really cool. And then I know Aaron mentioned that you guys were at a con in Germany. Was that like your first time there
Yeah, that's
meeting
the first
Aaron?
time we met. Yeah, that was like
Okay.
10 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And so were you invited to the show, and how was the show for you?
The one in Germany?
Hmm.
Oh, it was great. I'd been to Germany in 1979. I went as an exchange student, and I love that country. My wife is of German heritage. Her family was from Germany, and I love the food, I love the people, and I love their beer. So when they said you want to come to Germany, I'm like, yeah, let's go. So Julie and I went, and she the first time she's ever been there, and she just really fell in love with it. To be at the birthplace of her people, of her family and stuff was really cool.
And what city did it take place in?
The show was in Essen,
Hmm.
uh, and but we had been all over. We landed in Stuttgart. We went to Cologne. We went to I think we were in Frankfurt too. Um, and then we flew out of Dusseldorf. So we were all around that region.
Very cool. And then going back to the work. So I have your website pulled up,
Mm.
and the first thing we're seeing is the Chenoo. So how did that story come about, and why did you pick that folklore creature?
Well, I was it starts back a little bit further because I had just gotten introduced to crowdfunding. Uh, Back in 2015, we had done Chuck and I had done tried crowdfunding for Joe Frankenstein, and it was a disaster. I think we raised maybe $5,000. Wasn't very good. And then in 2020, I worked with Chuck on The Expendables Go to Hell, which was
Okay.
crowdfunded by Richard Meyer, and that did very, very well. And I started to think, well, okay, I'm sort of blacklisted out of Marvel and DC. Um, why don't I try this crowdfunding thing and see if I can make that work? And I had some properties because I had Alien Alamo, I had the Canoe, and I had the Girls of Dimension 13. And I had presented them to various publishers. Um, and Aftershock actually bought Girls of Dimension 13, and they rejected the Canoe and Alien Alamo. And so I decided, well, I'm going to start. Horror and monsters is a genre that I love. I love
Same here.
monster movies and stuff long before I even discovered comic books. And horror is bulletproof as far as like economics. In the worst of times in movies and in popular culture, horror always sells. So I decided, well, I would start with that. And the idea for the Chinook came about when I was looking for projects that I could pitch to other publishers, and I was taking my daughter to her college campus, and I live in Buffalo or the Buffalo area, and we were going by Lake Erie on the 190 outside of Buffalo, and in the middle of winter, and there's a huge storm that was off in the distance. You could see it was just black over Lake Erie, over frozen Lake Erie, and I thought, you know what, that would be a really cool setting for a horror story. And so I dropped her off. I went into a local coffee shop, got on my iPad, and started doing some research into snow creatures and that kind of stuff. And I discovered this Indian legend about a Chenoo.
Okay.
Um, and it's I forget the tribe, but it was like a northern New England tribe, maybe Connecticut, Massachusetts, something like that. It's sort of like a Wendigo
Hmm.
uh, creature, but it shares similarities. In in the case of the Chenoo, it was a man whose soul was scarred by typically cannibalism.
Hmm.
And so he changes into this ice creature, and he eats the hearts of men to try and reclaim the warmth that he'll never know as a human again. And I thought, wow, that's great. I'm gonna roll with that. I'm gonna change some of the stuff for my story needs, and then I'm gonna have him. Then I said, well, the Chenoo will come around when the great storms come out. It's not when it snows; it's when the great storms come across. Those 1 in 500 years or 1 in 100 year storms. He will come onto the surface to feed. And so in my story, that's what happens. It's this huge blizzard comes across Lake Erie and locks down Buffalo like it did in 1977, and which was real. And uh, and he traps these people in a house. So it's a claustrophobic tale of terror, which I
Nice.
really like. I like stories where people can't get out of places.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that was the germ for the Chenoo, and I'm actually going to do a prequel to it after I finish Escape from Monster Island. The next book that I'm going to do is called Chenoo 77, and it'll be about the Chenoo when he came on land in the 77 blizzard.
Nice. And you could also do like a future story because it's every 500 years, right? If you wanted to.
Well, it didn't end well for Chenoo in the first book, but there can be more than one too. So,
Yeah, because it's a person that's committed cannibalism,
right.
which is basically the same thing with the Wendigo, like you said, because
Is
they're
it?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's when the winter happens and the having dark, evil thoughts and hunger. And I think part of it is cannibalism because it drives you to commit
I see.
cannibalism.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
so very similar. And then Joe Frankenstein was the other one you mentioned that didn't.
Yeah, if you scroll up the other way, I think yeah, there we go. So we've got these are two campaigns that are currently funding Escape from Monster Island and Joe Frankenstein 3, The Eye of Ra. Um, and you can click on those and it'll take you to the campaigns. So those are live, so you can order the books and you can order all the other stuff that came with it. Like if you missed Joe Frankenstein 1 and 2, you can get one. You can get both, all of them here. Same thing with Monster Island. If you missed Monster Island and Return to Monster Island, you can get it with Escape and get them all together. Um, Now, the third part of Joe Frankenstein is written by me and Chuck Dixon again, but I'm not doing the artwork on it. The artwork is done by Anthony Gonzalez Clark, and he's just doing a killer job on this thing. Um, I couldn't take on the art chores because I'm busy doing Escape from Monster Island, and I needed to have somebody else work on it so I could get the two together. So. Yeah, so that's what this one is, and this is the third part of this is not a trilogy. This is an ongoing story.
Okay.
But this one takes place. Uh, well, if first off, I'll just say that if you've read The Ghosts of Matacumba Key, my last book, it ties in and sets up Escape from Monster Island and um, Joe Frankenstein 3. So that's the book that tied my Nolan verse together, The Ghost of Matacumba Key. It shows you where all the projects connect, what the through line is. And so then it
Okay.
sets up these two here. And so this one here takes place in 1927 as Mr. Lazarus, who is the name the monster uses in public, and Joe's great 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 grandfather, Frederick Frankenstein, who's like an Indiana Jones type of guy, adventurer, are looking for this elusive thing called the Eye of Ra, which the ancient Egyptians used to destroy a vampire invasion back in ancient Egypt. And when they find it, they also unleash the power of Lord Golgotha, who was in the first two Joe Frankenstein. So we get a kind of a historical background on where he came from and his origins. And then it sets up, the next story after that once they've captured the Eye of Ra, or do they?
Sounds like some fun stuff. And so is Joe Frankenstein the story that's like near and dear to your heart, or um because it's like your long form story?
Uh,
Or
I mean, you know what? Each one of them is near and dear to my heart as I'm working on them. Uh, it's kind of like, well, which kid do you like best?
some people have favorites. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're all different, and they all have
Yeah.
different things. Um, I mean, the Monster Island one is the first one, the one that got me going. So that one, uh, certainly has a little special place in my heart. Um, and the Chenoo is the first one that got me going on crowdfunding. Um, so it's hard to say. I love all my kids.
Good answer, right?
Hmm.
Well, that does bring me to one of my questions was which one of your stories is your favorite? And then I was going to ask which one has been most popular with fans?
That's a good question. Let me just preface it by saying I think the story that has the most emotional depth is Alien Alamo.
Okay.
Uh, I think the one that people like the best so far is the Chenoo. Um, yeah, I think that's true.
And that
Not
probably
and that's not based on any sales because the Chenoo was the first one that came out.
mhm.
I think it made 96,000. Um, and Ghost of Matacumba Key made like 230,000. So it's not an indication of how well it sold, basically. But when I hear from people who have read them, they tell me their favorite was the Chenoo. Straight up, that's a straight up horror tale. That's not
Yeah.
an all ages comic. That's a rated R, horror tale.
Yeah. Definitely one I'm gonna have to look into. And then also I gotta say that your logo is genius for Adventure Comics, having the compass as the
Oh,
logo.
thank you. The only
Yeah.
problem with it is that with having the map in the background, if I want to use that for like making patches or small things like on a hat, baseball hat, they have to simplify it. They got to take the map out.
Yeah.
It's too much detail.
And that's one
But
thing when I
looks
learned,
great on a comic.
yeah, what I learned in design is that logo has to work both big and microscopic.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I forgot about the microscopic part.
but it still works.
Oh
It's a good
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I mean you can make it small and it still looks good. It's just that depending on how you're going to reproduce it, if you need to use thread and that type of thing, they can't do that. But any kind of printed with ink, yeah, yeah, it works fine.
Yeah, and then so you said Alien Alamo had the most depth, and was that one in between the Chenoo and Joe Frankenstein, or where did that one lie in the timeline of when you created it?
In the way I created it, it was the one I did right after the Chenoo.
Okay.
Yeah, but the timeline for reading it is different. That one takes place in 1957, uh, whereas the Chenoo took place in modern times. Um, so like the reading order is Monster Island, uh, Joe Frankenstein 1 and 2, Monster Island 2, or Return to Monster Island, uh, Alien Alamo, Ghost of Matacumba Key, um, Escape from Monster Island, Joe Frankenstein 3, and then supplemental is a one page a 10-page story that was in Giant Size Two-Fisted Manly Tales that I wrote and Kelsey Shannon illustrated, which is called Buck Thornton Always Gets His Man. And in that one, we name and show again the aliens from Alien Alamo,
Okay.
but it takes place in the future. So now readers know the name of those aliens.
And then what inspired you to do the two-fisted manly tales?
Well, I was getting a little tired of uh, the lack of masculinity in anything.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's just everything from commercials to
Hmm.
TV shows and movies and stuff. It's like the dad or the guy is just a goofball or he's
Hmm.
ineffective or the girl is kicking this 120-pound girl is kicking the ass of a 200-pound man. That's just I mean there's more realism in Star Wars than there is in that.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
is so I just came up with this title in my head as I was ruminating on it, and I was like, oh wow, I could do an anthology book. And I got on the phone with a few writers, friends of mine like Chuck Dixon, Bo Smith, Kevin Grievous, Mike Barron, and I said, this is what I'm thinking, guys. And they were like, I'm in. And I'm like, okay. And then I just, I went out and tried to find, artists that, could fit the bill for the type of style of stories I was doing. And those guys were like, oh yeah, they don't do stories like this. I got to draw that. I got to draw that. And it came together like that, you know. So that was a fun and great project. That was a hardcover book too. 100 pages, I think.
Nice. And I forgot it's giant size two-fisted manly tales.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, and here's Ghost of Matacumba Key, which
Yeah.
I
Like
remember.
like the Shinu, that one is based on a real life incident too.
Okay.
The 1935 hurricane that hit Matacumba Key in the Florida Keys in 1935, and it was at that point it was the most powerful hurricane to ever make landfall in the United States, and like 400 people were killed. Um, a train was derailed by the flood tide and winds. And so I use that as a basis for the background of the story.
Okay. So when you write stories, do you like using real events to kind of tie it to the real world,
I
or
do. Uh, I don't necessarily start out that way to do it that way, but I do like to connect it, you know, to real things.
I think even Monster Island, you were using the jets from like World War II you mentioned where they had the pilot in the back that not
Oh,
pilot,
no,
but
no, not World War II. When it was written, that was the Navy Interceptor, the F-14
yes,
Tomcat.
sorry.
Uh, and by the time I got around to doing the sequel, they had retired the F-14s in favor of the F-18 Super Hornets, which are typically single seaters. But there's different versions of the F-18s, and I found, okay, well, these radar jamming planes, these F-18 Growlers, have two-seaters, and so I positioned the story so that I could get my characters in the Growler because I needed them to crash on the island at the same time.
Yeah. And then back on Escape from Monster Island, the two main characters are Duke and Mac, but
Mhm.
obviously I need to read them, but how does Rooster get into the mix? Because I'm kind of interested in that character
Rooster
design.
Rooster's one of the original characters from the first Monster Island book.
Yeah.
And in that one, our heroes crash land on the island because they hit the containment field, and it
Mm.
shorts out all their avionics, and they crash. And then they discover that a coup had taken place on Monster Island, and so um, one of the Gooch, AWOL, and there was a princess and her bodyguard and um, um, another alien who ends up being a traitor, and uh, and then Rooster, who though they were like political prisoners that were stuck on the island,
Okay.
because these guys were selling them off, instead of just pulling monsters on, they were taking money to uh uh because they're total capitalists. The Gooch are total capitalists in the universe. And so that's how those guys got stuck on the island originally. And so, yeah, so Rooster is one of the original characters. And in Escape, I think we're going to delve into a little bit about his past because we don't really know anything about him other than how he was on the island. So I'm going to tell a little backstory about him and who he was in his own world.
That sounds fun. And then because you mentioned that you had made it for your daughters, did that get them into reading comics or?
Well, my one daughter was very into it. My oldest, Sarah, was a huge comic book fan, still is. And film buff, all that. She went to SCAD, and
Mhm.
studied sequential art for storyboards and stuff like that. The other two could care less.
Oh, at least you can have one good one.
Yeah, yeah, one that was into it, but the others weren't really.
Yeah.
Didn't float their boat. That's fine.
And then let's see.
I remember, when I told my parents what I wanted to do when I was 12 years old. My mom was a teacher, and my father was a homicide cop, and in New York. And when I told, my mom was like, very supportive. She was very artsy and could understand, okay, let's not squash his dreams. He's only 12 years old at this point. Let's let him work things out. My dad was like, you know, if you don't want to go to college, that's fine, but pick a trade, do something, be a plumber or something like that, go get a skill. He says, you got two cousins that graduated from Pratt Institute, and one of them was laying brick, and the other one was flipping pizzas, so so he wasn't quite as supportive of that idea.
Did he eventually come around once you
Yes.
started?
He did. Yeah. He was not a comic book guy. I mean, he read them as a kid in the 40s and stuff. But when I started working in newspaper strips, and the strip I was working on, Rex Morgan, MD, was in his local paper, then I knew I had him, because he called me one day. We were doing the storyline about black mold in the basement, and there was a smell down there. And so my phone rings. I pick it up, and my dad doesn't even say hello. He goes, "I know what the smell is." I'm like, "Huh?" Yeah, I'm like, "What's the context of this call?" Yeah, he goes, "I know what it is, and in the basement." And I go, "Oh, okay, all right. What is it?" He goes, "There's a stiff down there." Typical cop thinking there's a body down there. I'm like, "All right," but that told me that he was reading it, you know,
Nice.
which is cool.
And so, did you write the stories for that strip too and illustrate
No,
it?
no, the writer of that, Woody Wilson, had been writing it for years before I came on board.
Okay. And then, was that, uh, did you end up doing the Phantom strips after that, or?
I got both those gigs very close together.
Yeah.
They offered me Rex more. I was trying to get Monster Island syndicated as an adventure strip,
Mm.
and all the syndicates loved it, but they all said the same thing: we can't sell a continuity strip.
Oh, okay.
Newspapers just won't buy it. So any continuity strips that were still being published were it. And one of
Mm.
them that they had was this medical drama called Rex Morgan, MD, and they offered it to me, and I was a little hesitant because it looked like crap, um, but it had been around for many, many years. So I'm like, well, send me samples of it in its heyday. And so in the 50s and 60s, they sent me these samples and they were gorgeous. It was like, oh my
Hmm.
God, this is a gorgeous strip, well written and everything. This is, I want to try and uh, bring this back to its former glory. So I took the gig, but I had told the editor in chief there, I said, what I'd really like to do is the Phantom. And they said, well, we don't have any openings on the Phantom. So I took Rex. Then 1 month later, he calls me, says, we have an opening on the Sunday Phantom. So it was really just about a month,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
that I, had the two gigs.
So once you got on the Phantom, how long did you work on the Phantom before you started into like the DC and Marvel?
Well, Marvel and DC was before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I, in fact, Monster Island was before that. That I got in around 2000
Oh, okay.
is when I started doing the strip work. So, because the business was imploding, the comic book business was sort of imploding, and as I had mentioned, I wasn't liking the direction of things. I was looking for new challenges, and I thought I'd like to try my hand at newspaper strips because a
And
lot
then,
of artists that I admired growing up were newspaper guys.
oh, okay. What were some of your favorites of the newspaper
Frank
strip?
Robbins, Roy Crane, um, E.C. Segar of Popeye fame,
Yeah.
Milton Caniff. Um, those are my major ones. I also liked Alex Raymond and Hal Foster, but not to the extent that I like those other guys.
And then ECC, what was his last name?
E.C. Segar,
EC.
Segar. He's the creator of
Yeah.
Popeye.
Oh, okay. And then so was that part of your childhood that you were into the comic sh strips?
No, I didn't discover comic strip artists till I went to the Kubert School
Oh, okay.
and was exposed to because that generation, in terms of like the major league, the comic
Mm.
strip guys were the major league.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
the comic books were the minors. And
Hmm.
every comic book guy in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s aspired to be a newspaper guy. So the John Buscema's, Jack Kirby's, John Romita's, Joe Kubert's, all Alex Toth's, all these guys were inspired by the comic strip guys and wanting to get into that level. Uh, by Certainly by the 1970s, that wasn't the same because the newspaper strips were dying,
Hmm.
newspapers were dying. Um, and then by the 80s, comics were becoming more mainstream and more artistic and, not just for kids and that kind of stuff. And then it switched around entirely, you know.
Okay. And then kind of your beginning journey, when did you start drawing?
I don't know. Um, you know, I discovered comics like as a career, like something I wanted to do when I was 12
Hmm.
in sixth grade. But I had been drawing before that. I just didn't have a focus. I guess I was drawing monsters and stuff out of monster magazines. Um, but once I discovered comics, then I had a direction, you know.
And then you mentioned being a big monster guy, and obviously Joe Frankenstein is that one of your favorite monsters is the Frankenstein
Yeah,
monster.
that's my favorite monster. Yeah.
Mm.
That and Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were my two favorites as a kid.
See, mine are the Creature of the Black Lagoon and the Fly are my two favorites.
Oh, the fly, yeah.
Yep.
Brundle fly or the original fly?
Both. And
Mhm.
on that subject, on the professionals, when you mentioned him barfing on the face, that's from the sequel.
Is it? Is that from the second one? I guess
Yeah,
he barfed on the guy's hand though in the first one.
first one and his
Yeah.
ankle. But the face was the sequel, which I think you would enjoy. if you go into it thinking of it as its own movie.
Right.
Because, because
That's
it,
one with Eric Stoltz.
yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it does have some carryover from the previous one, but it's a different genre. Like the first one's definitely body horror, and then the second one is more kind of adventure, revenge, a little bit of like Truman Show, where the guy's moves are every move is being watched and stuff.
Hmm.
So a fun
Okay.
one.
I may have seen it, but if I have it, it was only once and it was many, many years ago. So,
Mhm. Yeah, they definitely save the special effects for when he turns into the fly, you know. But and then you also have a YouTube channel which you do the 31 Days of Monsters for Halloween.
right. Yep, for October. That's a daily show, Monday through Friday at 12 noon. And then weekends, it's a floating show. It's when I can
So
get it in.
are you a big Halloween guy, or is it just because it's the season where you can do all your monster movies that you enjoy?
Both. I love Halloween. I love the build up to Halloween. I love the autumn and the
Mm,
changes, the smells, all that stuff. And it's just an excuse for me to rewatch and watch horror movies again, you know.
mm,
In fact, the 31 Days of Monsters is how I started my YouTube channel because I knew as a crowdfunder, you have to have a presence
yeah.
to reach people. And so, people kept telling me you got to have a YouTube channel. And I'm like, well, all right, what kind of content am I going to offer? You
Yeah.
know? So I said, well, do what you know. So I love monster movies. I figured, well, I'll start with that. And that's how I started my YouTube channel was with 31 Days of Monsters.
It was a very fun start.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It got all the rust off of me, by the time I got done with it in 31 days, I had a better handle on, you know, how to present myself on screen, how to talk and um, cogently express myself, that type of stuff.
and do you like to decorate too leading up to Halloween, or is it
No, my
just
wife does all that.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you dress up or
No, I haven't in years. I mean, Bart Sears used to have a Halloween party that we used to go to
oh, very fun?
years ago, and that was a lot of fun. But I haven't done anything like that. Well, probably since my kids were young, I probably dressed up for a couple things then,
Mm.
you know, but nothing since then.
And then Frankenstein's monster, what about it was what you what did you like about it?
I like that he was an innocent, that he becomes a monster because of how he's treated.
Hmm.
And he's when you see him with the little girl and he throws her into the lake, he doesn't mean to do it. He's not trying to hurt her. He just doesn't understand, what he has just done. Um, and then, when Fritz uh, is torturing him, he hasn't done anything and he's being tortured and beaten and stuff. So I like that. I resonated with that as a kid when I saw it and I still love it, And the makeup, Jack Pierce's makeup is at the apex of Golden Age horror. Karloff never looked better because he was never thinner.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was a perfect confluence of great makeup, great casting, and a great story.
Mhm.
You know, I like it
Yeah.
better than the sequel, Bride. Everybody says, "Oh,
Mm.
Bride's the best sequel, since Godfather 2, It's like, no, it's not.
Yeah, I saw the on Frankenstein. I've seen the remake that they did. It was not the trying to remember which one it was. I don't remember which year, but I saw the remake of it where he his mother dies, and that's what leads him to create the monster in the first place. And then it ends where he um the monster kills his little brother and his wife, and so he tries to recreate her.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah, I
trying
don't
to
know which
remember.
version that is.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up and send it to you
Yeah,
later.
sure.
But for like the Universal monsters, I have seen like the original Wolfman. It's been a
Mhm.
few years since I've seen that. And then the original Dracula, which I'm kind of with Aaron on that. He's kind of a normal dude almost. I like some of the definition of monster that they label, like the Invisible Man, I don't see as the monster. He's more mad scientist, but I
Sure.
would consider Jekyll and Hyde monster because he actually
Right.
turns into a creature.
Yeah, true. Now, the Invisible Man's got the highest death count of any Universal monster.
Yeah,
With the exception, at least on-screen deaths, with the exception of maybe Dracula, because he's been killing people for hundreds of years,
yeah.
you know. But is as they're presented, when he wrecks the train and kills over 100 people, he takes the cake.
I might not have seen that one on the remakes because I saw the one that was closer to like the book, though they had changed where um why the friend betrays him. But I don't.
Mm.
Again, I'll have to look up when that one was. And
Yeah, I'm talking about the original one from 1930, with Claude Rains, 1932, I think. Invisible Man.
right. And then I've also seen that Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I actually watched that last weekend,
Well,
but
I
it
hope you
was.
don't agree with Aaron on that one.
I can see some of his points, but it's a fun movie.
Ah, okay.
But I grew
That's
up
the
on
first
it.
time you've ever seen it?
No, I've
Oh,
seen it as a kid.
okay.
So like Abbott and Costello is one of the movies I remember seeing a lot as a kid. It just had been years since I've seen it.
Okay.
I saw that one, and then I remember seeing the one where they're in the haunted house, but it actually has like secret passageways
Hold that
around.
ghost.
Yep. And then I saw the one where they go down to Africa, their military movies. Um, yeah, it's just been years since I've seen all those films. I
Hmm.
think I saw the Invisible Man one too, where they,
Yeah, that one's not great.
yeah, but it's still fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
And and then I know you do the Landing Party, which is your newest show, which is about the original Star Trek series, which I
Right.
have a theory why you don't like Next Generation, right?
I don't dislike it. I just don't think it's as good as the original. I mean, it started off horribly,
Hmm.
very boring, uh, uh, very much a rip-off of the original, and then actually after Roddenberry left, and died, I guess, is when they had the freedom to actually put drama back into it,
Hmm.
his sort of uh, he really developed some pretty far leftist views of the world and stuff. And he had this utopian view of everything
Hmm.
that, but human nature is what it is. We can overcome certain political differences and stuff, but people still hate each other. People still are going to have
Hmm.
arguments, and people are still going to abuse substances. No matter how far down the road we are. And
Hmm.
the writers are saying there's no drama here. There's no conflict.
Hmm.
You can't have drama without conflict. And he's made it such that in this perfect world, there's no conflict.
Yeah. Well, it always made me laugh when Diana Choice tries to say like, "Oh, we don't use money" and stuff like that too.
Oh
Like
yeah.
some,
Yeah. They
yeah,
just do it out of the kindness of their hearts. And
yeah.
yeah.
You're
Again,
like, what about the
it's not human
Ferengi?
nature. There's going to be slugs and there's going to be workers. And
Yeah, yeah. Uh, but on the I had a theory of like why maybe Aaron doesn't like the new series, like the Next Generation, is because they went more into the science fiction part of it and more into like the politics and diplomacy than the action adventure that the and a little bit of fantasy that the original series had.
Well, I would counter and say I think the original series had more science fiction,
Mm,
specifically the first season, where you had all those science fiction writers that were writing scripts for them, um, you know, touching on various things and his whole Jonathan Swiftian view of storytelling by being able to hide social uh, things of the present under the guise of something else, you know. I think, in the later one, in the next gen, yeah, they definitely did science fiction, but they used to use a lot of gobbledygook too.
yeah.
Whenever Geordi would open his mouth, it was like, really? You're just making shit up now.
I do like Jordy though, and Data.
I
But
like Data. Yeah. But I mean, when I first watched The Next Generation, I was appalled that, after, I don't know, 4 episodes, I think,
Mhm,
Picard offers to surrender the Enterprise twice.
mhm.
Are you kidding me? James Kirk would have blown it up in your face.
Yep.
He
Now
wouldn't have
from the
surrendered shit. He'd have blasted you.
I told Gary this, but my favorite character from the original series is McCoy.
You like McCoy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I guess I like the grumpy old guy.
He's the emotional part of that triumvirate.
Mm,
You got the man of action, the man of logic, and the man of emotion.
yeah, I like his character.
Hmm. As particularly after Gene Coon came on and started writing some humorous lines and stuff about, with him and Spock and their relationship and stuff. He really fleshed that stuff out.
What did you think of the movies, the remake
The
movie?
J.J. Abrams ones,
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah, I concur. The only thing I liked was when Bones was getting Kirk on the ship by giving him all the diseases. That was the only
Oh, in the
scene that,
first one,
yeah, that was the
yeah.
only scene that made me laugh.
The first one I call Frat Boys in Space.
Mm,
The second one I call Wrath of Khan 2.
mhm.
And then the third one I just call shit. I,
I haven't
I,
even seen the third one.
as soon in the opening sequence where Bones and Kirk are running like Abbott and Costello through the woods, and then the Enterprise comes rising up out of this lake. It was like, okay, now all science has just gone out the window. This is a ship designed for space, not the pressures of the sea.
Mhm.
It's just stupidity.
Yeah, they did it because they thought it would look cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I do like that Simon Pegg is in it, but I like Simon Pegg.
I like Simon Pegg in his movies, but as Scotty,
Yeah,
again, he was given stupid things to do. I don't
and
blame him for it. I just blame the writers, you know.
yeah, um, yeah, like Shaun of the Dead was good. So was Hot Fuzz, like you
Hot
mentioned.
Fuzz was great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the idea of these small town where it seems like it's all good and stuff like that, but there's actually like a murderous cult in the town.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And the way
brilliant.
they reveal it was great. I
Yeah,
love the double entendre stuff, like
yeah,
when he runs into that woman who's doing the crossword puzzle,
yeah.
and he goes, hag. He's like, what?
Oh,
Hag, three across, yeah.
fascist.
Fascist, yeah. Yeah. That's hysterical.
Fascism. And then the TV show is pretty good too, but it's kind of abstract humor and it's more like it's in Shaun of the Dead, the girl that he runs into on the street. That's
Hmm.
there. So it's her and him pretending to be a couple to get a flat together. And then Nick Frost is his buddy who's in the military or like National Reserve or something like that, trying to get back into it.
Okay.
But it's a funny one. And then he's a comic artist that works at a comic shop. So
Oh,
there's a lot
okay.
of pop culture
Cool.
references and stuff. So It's kind of a fun one. And then they did do another series that is called Truth Seekers. And that one is Nick Frost lead, and he plays a cable installer.
Oh, I've seen that.
Oh, you have? What
Yeah,
did you
that one
think?
I've seen. Yeah. Well, I never finished it, so I don't think I liked it too much.
Uh, I liked it. It. I thought the story was pretty good. How it all gets revealed towards the end.
Yeah,
But
maybe I didn't stay long enough,
mhm.
you know.
That one they also made a lot of culture references. They reference They Live, but the way the girl describes it isn't actually how They Live is. You know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think she makes, if I remember correctly, she makes mention that people acting strangely or something like that, but that's not it. That would
Hmm,
be Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Another good
right.
movie.
Oh, it's a great movie. There's two of them are great.
Yeah, the Donald Sutherland and the original.
Hmm, exactly.
The
The one with
Nicole
Nicole
Kidman
Kidman was,
was trash.
yeah.
Yeah, though I did like her in The Others. That was a good movie. Did you ever see that
I
one?
haven't seen that one though.
Oh, it's a good one. It's has a good twist. You might see it coming, especially uh well, I won't say it, so you just have to watch it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but it's a good one. Yeah. I also like movies a lot and
Mhm.
comics. I've been getting more into Western comics. I started out with like the manga and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You said
but
Western comics. I thought maybe you were talking about cowboy comics or something.
well, that too.
Yeah.
I mean, Aaron kind of got me into the Western comics, you know. But another genre of movie I like is the spaghetti westerns.
Hmm,
The Sergio Leone's Man with No Name trilogy.
hmm,
I like the sequel and the Fistful for a few dollars more and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the best out of the trilogy because there's a little
hmm.
bit more humor in both of those.
Right.
But yeah, it's very fun stuff. And then getting back to you on like when you go to do your pages and layouts, do you listen to anything while you work or do you like to be focused?
When I'm doing layouts, that's the heavy lifting. So I have it completely silent. That's where I do all my thinking, interpreting, designing, all that kind of stuff. When I'm penciling, and particularly when I'm inking, I'll throw movies on in the
Oh,
background. I've got my TV right here and I'll throw movies on, particularly old movies because there's a lot of dialogue. So I can just
mm,
listen to it.
yeah,
There's not as much long pauses.
nothing visual heavy, just
Yeah, I mean, you can always tell when something visual is going to happen because things will get silent and you hear the music ramp up and you're like, okay, what's that?
yeah. So, and then you do the full script, or do you do the layouts with uh what you
It
want going out?
depends. If I'm doing it myself, I'll vacillate between um a tighter script versus doing just a plot and breaking it
Mhm,
down via plot and then adding the dialogue afterwards.
mhm.
Primarily that's how I do it for myself. If I'm writing for another artist, I'll usually write a full script,
Okay.
panel by panel, dialogue and stuff like that. Um, we're we're working sort of like a hybrid Marvel style on Joe Frankenstein 3, that we have a plot with dialogue in the plot, so that Anthony can get an idea of what's happening. And then as the pages come in, we'll tie it all together with the dialogue, the actual printed dialogue.
And with Monster Island and Frankenstein 3 wrapping up, what's your plans for the future? I know you said Joe Frankenstein's ongoing, so will it be another Joe Frankenstein book?
Yeah,
Or
there'll be another Joe Frankenstein, but the next one I'll be working on specifically will be Shinu 77.
oh, okay.
Yeah, to get that one out. And
And
I'm thinking of doing breaking up some of the books that have already been published into individuals, floppies and getting them into comic shops. Um, so that's a possibility too.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. So when you do the Canoe 77, are you gonna do the like you usually like with Monster Island where there's the bundle to get the first and second?
Yeah, and you'll have the opportunity too to get the Shinu plushie too
Oh, nice.
in that campaign. There's the heart that he tears out too.
Hmm. He's so heartfelt.
He is. Yeah, here's the Shinu book. It's a CGC version. You
Hmm.
know.
With how fluffy he is, if you put him on your head, you'll have hair. And then, oh yeah, the other show you do is the Professionals.
Oh
So
yeah, the pros.
how did that actually come about?
That's a good question. I can't remember how we started it. We broadcasted something all together, and then afterwards, when we were backstage, we were like, you know what, that went really well. We should do this more often, together. And I think it might have been Art that suggested we do that. And then I came up um, with the name of the professionals for the
Nice.
name of the group. Um, I think Andy had said the Bros. And then I said, what about the professionals? And then
Which is,
that's what stuck. Yeah.
which is a fun name. And then the thumbnail is like Reservoir Dogs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I created that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and then, do you still read comics or are you so busy with working on comics that you don't have much time?
I don't have the time. And
Mm,
my eyes can't handle reading, especially new stuff. Aaron and I were just talking about this the other day, how when we get overwhelmed
hmm.
because you got to wear so many hats doing what
Yeah.
we're and you're constantly being pulled in different directions and different uh, skills that you have to initiate. You start to lose some of the passion for what got you into it in the first place. And both of us agreed that, what you need to do then is just sit down with your old comics, the ones that inspired you as a kid, the artists that inspired you, and pull them out and read them, and you feel them and smell them and stuff like that. And just really get you jazzed up again. It works every time.
Yeah. Uh, do you have you read any of the other CG guys' books or?
Yeah, I've read a few of them. I have so many that I've backed that they're still in their boxes over there, And you ask any of
Yeah.
the guys, they haven't read them either.
Yeah.
We support each other and all that, but we just don't have the time to read them, you
Mm.
know.
So just like refilling the cup, basically, on like inspiration is
Yeah.
what you have
Uh,
time for.
Yeah, and you get that from the stuff that initially got you into it,
Yeah.
those artists whose work you admire. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not going to look at anybody who's modern and try to say, well, I'm going to try to work my style into that. That
Mhm.
ship has sailed,
Yeah.
I am what I am right now, and then it's just a question of being the best that you can be,
Mhm.
doing what it is you like to do. I don't like to read those kind of comics, so there's no reason for me to try and emulate them.
Yeah.
To me it becomes disingenuous.
Mhm.
So I have to be true to myself and true to my visions and the things that inspired me. And then that will hopefully translate into the work that the readers will appreciate.
Yeah. That's one thing I've been doing is just trying to read more comics to kind of learn the form better
Hmm.
in the wild kind because I did go to school for it in my I got a master's degree in illustration, but I still feel
Where
like I have a lot to learn.
where did you go
Uh,
to school?
uh, it's Academy of Art University in California. I did the
California.
online program. The teacher
Oh,
was
okay.
really good. One of the things that he always hammered home was uh, about the storytelling, that you need clarity and You also do like Zoom videos to kind of when you do critiques, which a lot of the other teachers didn't do,
Mm,
but so it was very helpful.
yeah.
But um, I still got a lot to learn. But
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the three things I preach are clarity, dynamics, and immersion.
yeah,
If you do the first two, you have a possibility of doing the third, you
yeah,
know, and that's important because it's a rare thing when you can immerse your reader, uh, because the tendency is to try to dazzle them
yeah,
and show off,
hmm
and to me, when I see that, I find that pretentious and it turns me off. Be straight, tell the story, tell it excitingly, tell it clearly, and then when you need to put all that detail in, it'll have purpose, you know, and then you'll have that wow factor too. But you want to keep the reader in there. You don't want them standing around looking at your artwork and saying, "Ooh, look at all these lines, look at all these bricks, look at all this shit."
yeah,
No, you got to get to the next page. You got to get to the next panel. I
hmm
want you to put that thing down after 25 minutes and go, "I didn't know what just happened around me because I was in this story." You
yeah.
know?
And one of the other things they always talk about was the silhouette test.
Hmm.
That if your character reads uh your character and their action read in the silhouette, then there's clarity what's
Hmm.
going on. So
Right. Well, that's a good method for design too, is if you can re pick out who that character is by their silhouette, that's a good design.
yeah, they did a lot about shape and design, because
Hmm.
part of the school is also they do classes for um visual development, which is a different branch than what I took, which was mainly in comics.
Hmm.
So, but yes.
Okay.
So, and that's one thing that I see is I've been looking through like your portfolio and some of your work on Read All Comics. I found some of your Batman and uh I didn't find the Phantom, but I guess that was more just the strips and then uh there was one that said that it was from like Moonrock Publishing. Does that
Oh,
sound
the not Moon Rock.
uh, sorry,
Um, it is Moon something. Moonstone.
Moonstone.
Close enough. Moon Rock. Moonstone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a Phantom story for them.
Yeah, when I was looking at had listed three, so I thought I think it was like the one, two, and three, but
Well, those are Moonstone reprinted my strips. But they
oh,
did a
okay.
Phantom annual, and then I did an actual comic book story of the Phantom with Chuck Dixon.
Okay. I should look and see if that's still for sale somewhere. Okay. And then let's see. Oh, just a little side thing. Uh I grew up in Graham, Washington, so I could say I lived in Graham.
I never even heard of Graham Washington.
It's
Sounds
a
like a
little
name, you know.
yeah, it's a little
George Washington's kid, Graham Washington.
rural area. It was in the wetlands too. So,
Oh,
but
Aaron country.
yeah. Yeah, I still live in Washington. This is probably going to be the photo I use for the thumbnail.
Oh, sure. It's from smart ass to wise ass.
But I think it's the shorts, but it still looks like a model pose, like it should be on the Carl Jr. ads.
Ah, I was trying to replicate the one from 1981,
Mm.
but I didn't have a lounge chair, so I just sat on the wall.
Some more recent pages from Monster Island.
Yeah.
Oh, The
That's the
picture that
one
gives
that
Aaron.
drove. That's the one that drove Aaron nuts. I just did another one too, where I was sitting in there reading Daredevil #1
Nice.
and sent it to him. Just hanging out, Aaron.
So you're not a, do you collect the comics too, like he does in the slabbed, or are you
Unslabbed.
re unslabbed?
I bought
So
an
you,
FF. I bought an FF2 off eBay that was slabbed, and the first thing I did was take a screwdriver to it and bust it open.
so at heart, you're a comic reader, not a collector.
Well, I'm a collector too, but I'm not an investor.
Uh,
You know, its value is whatever.
oh, it's you in 30 years.
It's me now. Cigar and a bourbon. Sounds good.
So how did you get started on the carnivore diet? What prompted you to start that?
Well, I'm constantly reading about that kind of stuff. Human diets, perfect human diets, things for just for health reasons, let alone anything else. And I came across um, Dr. Sean Baker's book, The Carnivore Diet. And so I decided to read it and see what he had to say. And then there's another doctor, Ken Berry, who talks about either carnivore or ketovore diets, and how they're so natural. It's like, uh, we've been on the planet like 22 million years,
Yeah.
and we've only been eating grains
Hmm.
for like 18,000. So
Yeah.
in the space of like if our timeline is from the beginning of one end zone to another on a football field, the time we've been eating grains is about the 1 foot line, you know.
Yeah. I've
So
heard.
it isn't, it's not something that we've, and vegetables. Oh, you got to eat your vegetables, your salads, and all that kind of stuff. And the more I read about that, and you look back at our ancestors, and it's like, well, there's no way they were eating salad or
Mhm.
vegetables because they're calorically deficient, and you're burning 12, 15,000 calories a day walking everywhere, fighting for your life, hunting,
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. You need as much nutrient dense stuff that you can get, and you get that from fat,
Hmm.
saturated fat, protein, marrow, organ meat, that kind of stuff. And then when you
Yeah.
eat it from a ruminant animal, they've absorbed all those nutrients from grasses and vegetables and stuff like that, in a way that we can't you know.
Yeah.
So all this stuff just makes perfect sense to me.
Hmm.
And then when you start to read about, when and how saturated fat got demonized
Hmm.
in this country, then you realize, okay, follow the money. This is politics. This is not about true health, you
Yeah.
know. Uh,
Uh,
and then you just look at the numbers. You look at the obesity rate and the diabetes rate in this country. You look at what happened with COVID, and then you find out that 90% of all U.S. deaths were people with four or more comorbidities.
hmm.
You know, that is an indictment on the health of this country and the
Yeah.
foods that we eat. You know,
I think Bancroft was talking about how there's so much chemicals in the US food that is not allowed in other countries.
yeah,
And then on the thing about the grain, I remember hearing from an anthropologist that in the records, you can sh see when people started eating grain because there's cavities in the teeth.
yes, yeah, because the bacteria feeds on the glycogen
Hmm.
and the sugars. you know. There were no dentists,
Yeah.
500 years ago, 800, 1,000 years ago,
Hmm.
when these people were eating animal fat and animal meat, that was, their teeth were healthy, you know, their poops were healthy, their
Yeah.
internal things, their skin, all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and now, you look at us and we're falling apart. We're living longer, but our lives aren't healthier. We're only
Yeah.
living longer because we're prolonging things.
Hmm.
Um, Other anthropologists and epidemiologists say that the human body, really should be living to 120 years, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but we're killing ourselves off,
Hmm.
you know.
That's
So,
another thing is like the pharmaceutical companies. I've heard
oh,
from like some doctors how colonoscopies, the US is the only country that really pushes that as a
hmm,
preventative, and that other countries don't do as many tests and they have a lower death rate too.
interesting.
Yeah.
I've never had one.
Mhm.
I'm
I've never
62.
had one either.
Well, are you over 40?
No, I'm 31.
Oh, yeah, then yeah, they wouldn't need one. They say they used to be over 50.
And
Now
then they
they've
push,
lowered it to 40.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's, well, they got to make the money,
Well,
A
that's
lot of
that's
us.
really again, follow the money, you
Yeah.
know. Now that's not to say, there are certain aspects of medicine that have grown leaps and bounds, and that's in the surgical end of things and the
Hmm.
technology end of things. But when it comes to preventive health, we have not made any strides. We've gone backwards, in fact,
Yeah.
because of bad science.
Hmm. Well, that's like, they tried to make Tom Cruise out to be insane for talking about depression being connected to diet and health and exercise. But then to find out, he's right.
Mm-hmm.
They had edited like the interview that he was in, cutting out the part where he was talking about doing the research and reading up on that. And
Yeah.
yeah, and again, media, how it kind of tries to warp and twist things.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I love this picture.
What is it?
It's John
John Grant.
Garand and his kids, and they're holding the
Mm,
Garand M1. It's so great.
great reference too, if you ever want to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, do you use a lot of reference when you draw, or do you mostly draw from your imagination?
Mostly for my imagination, but particularly like if I have complex hand things
Hmm.
or angles and stuff, I'll just set my phone camera on timer and I'll pose for it myself. I take a lot of reference photos, which out of context look very funny in my in my phone thing. What is this? I'm like, oh yeah, I needed this reference shot.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes I'll just act something out, if I want to get like feel how it feels with the body, like how you twist and stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, we're artists. We act. We're
Oh
weird
yeah.
sometimes.
You get a mirror, you make facial expressions in a mirror, as you're drawing it, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. Learning as much stuff so you can draw it from memory eventually, right?
Yeah, exactly. You develop a style of how to break things down simply, so that you can do them quickly.
Your dog.
Yeah, that's not my dog, but my dog is that breed.
Yeah. I remember you talking, I think maybe it was last professionals about your dog waking you guys up because she doesn't howl that much.
Oh yeah, she woke us up in the middle of the night howling.
Yeah. Good movie.
Yeah, that's a good one. I did
Mhm.
that a few years ago.
Yeah, that was another one I saw as a kid was Clash of the Titans, the original. The
Hmm.
remake was trash. I didn't like it. But I always liked the design of the
Pumpkin.
well, I forgot the guy's name, the guy that was cursed for killing the Pegasus. You remember? Or did you see that?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in years.
Hmm.
I mean, that one came out right after Star Wars, and it was a kiss of death. It was like,
Hmm.
oh, this is antiquated. This technique.
Yeah, but I mean, I was born in the 90s and I still enjoy the movie, so
Oh yeah, I mean they're fun to see. They're charming,
uh,
you know.
uh,
I love. I mean, look at this. This is talk about your B movies. War of the Colossal Beast. Um, it's genuine. It's just fun. For me, for a B movie to work, you have to believe that the actors believe it.
yeah.
You know, because the premises are so ridiculous. But if they are willing to buy into the fact that this tree is walking and killing people, then I'm willing to buy it.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
set the ground in any storytelling, you set the parameters. And as long
Mhm.
as you stay in those parameters, no matter how ridiculous they are, people will believe it. They'll go along for the ride. But as soon as you start breaking your own rules is when, the lights come on, you realize that this is all fake.
Yeah, I think that's why the fourth wall breaking that, or like the meta stuff that they've been doing and like the modern stuff kind of kills it because it's not being serious about the story that you're trying to create.
Hmm.
And what did you
Or
learn
or
from?
or if the characters are too self-aware,
Yeah.
about the situation, and they make
Mhm.
pop culture references, you know. Again, it's a
Yeah.
kiss of death.
Yeah, especially, well, one, you're referencing something that may go out of the culture eventually and not be popular anymore, and so it loses its context. But two, it might not even fit in the story that
Hmm.
you're trying to create. Yeah. Uh, so with crowdfunding, the fulfillment, what did you learn from doing your first fulfillment?
It's harder than it looks. It's complicated. There's always going to be mistakes. Um, try and get everybody to get their addresses updated before you start fulfilling.
Yeah.
Um, is one thing. Make sure you understand the postage rates so you don't screw yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and just be organized.
Did you have a lot of international
Hmm. Yeah, oh yeah,
fulfillments?
yeah. We've shipped to 37 different countries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Which was
yeah.
the farthest away for you?
Well,
Or,
Australia
mm,
is pretty far. Japan, we've shipped to Japan. Um, New Zealand, and as far as like in South America, I think we've shipped as far south as Uruguay.
oh, wow.
I think. I'm not positive because my wife Julie handles that. I have to create,
Yeah.
and I've got to promote, and I've got
Hmm.
to do all the asset creation for campaigns and all that, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I got to create these things.
Fun.
That's my favorite movie right there.
Hmm. Your
It's my
grandchild?
it's my grandbaby, yeah.
Was she the one that was making the noise upstairs earlier?
Oh yeah. Yeah, now
Mm,
she's just about ready to start walking. She can stand, she pulls herself up and can stand up, and then she scoots around on her knees and banging around and stuff. So she's pretty far ahead of the curve, and I think she's gonna be standing and walking pretty soon.
nice.
Yeah.
So, is that the one that the dog is jealous of?
Yes. Yeah, Pumpkin is jealous of Juniper.
Both plant names. One's a berry and the other's a squash.
Yes, it's true. There it is.
Oh,
Thinking from
that's
another
another good
world.
good horror movie that I liked was the original Little Shop of Horrors.
I never liked that one myself. Never,
Mm,
never got the. Oh, there's that one I love.
yeah,
Them.
them. Saw that. uh, That one's been years since I've seen it. Like, when I was little, when we come home from church, there was always like the old movie channel horror movies
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah.
I always catch that tail end of it. Like I saw the tail end to Legend before I saw the whole movie.
Oh geez.
Big Trouble in Little China. I always saw from like the scene where ape creatures behind the walls staring out, and then the hand comes out and grabs her and pulls her.
Mm.
Yeah. And the scene from Golden Child where he's going across like the stones to get the blade. But yeah. I wish they still did the old movie channels, but they have like the streaming stuff now, I guess.
Yeah, you can
But,
stream just about anything now.
mhm. What type of did they, well, obviously weren't like during the 70s and 60s, didn't they have like the single it would only air once in a while or during like a certain
Oh
season?
yeah. Yeah, there was no videotape. There's no,
Mhm.
you when seasonal things were on, like Rudolph or Charlie Brown Christmas or Charlie Brown Hall, you had one shot at it, and it was going to be a year before it was back on.
Yeah.
And same with the creature features. They might show it twice a year, maybe,
Mhm.
I don't know, but you never knew when. More than likely they didn't, because they had a whole slew of stuff to choose from. So
Yeah. Do you think that's why when it comes Halloween, that you're excited to do the horror movies instead of like watching them year round? You do it.
I do watch them year round.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
me too.
I just love them. I just, I'll take a break after doing 31 days of them, but then, come January, I'm back at it, watching it,
Yeah. When I
my
watch a lot, it's like Shaun of the Dead and John Carpenter's The Thing.
hmm hmm I
Fun
love
movies.
I love horror movies, sci-fi movies, and westerns. Those are my
Hmm.
favorites.
Same here. I do like the fantasies like Lord of the Rings and Legend, like I mentioned. But and Kroll. Kroll was good too. Did you ever see that one?
I remember that one. 1980, something like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that was another one that I saw as a kid was Dragon Slayer. Did you ever see that
Mhm.
one? Yeah, I just remember the scene where he walks in and the princess getting eaten by the little dragons. But yeah, great stuff. And then the earliest comics I wound up seeing was the Jack Trick Christian comics. Did you ever see those?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, like some of the covers I remembered was like Noah's Ark, where the people are clawing at each other to escape the water. So they're like
Mhm.
pretty brutal stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
was it good artwork?
Yeah, it was fairly good. I could probably
Mm.
pull it up. Let me. Um, so I know like Aaron, Gary, and Dan are more religious. Are you more secular?
Oh no, I'm a Catholic.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Hmm.
that might be why then, because I guess he bashed Catholics pretty.
Who
Uh,
did? Oh, this guy whose artwork you're
yeah,
talking about? Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, because I think he was Protestant.
Yeah, one of them, huh? Yeah,
So are you?
The Catholics are second only to the Jews in how they're persecuted by people.
Oh, it's not Trick. It's Chick. Jack Chick. That's who it is.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I know those. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have
Yeah,
to pull
yeah.
it up.
Yeah, you don't have to pull those up. Yeah, yeah, they're definitely anti-Catholic.
Yeah. And my dad had a stack of them. The one that got me was like it creeped me out as a kid was I think it was called like Power or something. It had like all the demons on it. Creepy stuff.
Mm.
But first taste of comics.
Oh, great.
Then afterwards, I read like a X-Men comic that had it was Shadowcat and there was these purple aliens that the story had to do with they were claiming that they killed their god or something like that. I don't remember the title of it. But I,
Okay.
I don't think he knew. I think they were called like the Unborn or something. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But their design was cool. But and then con wise, what was your first con that you went to?
I went to a Star Trek convention in Titusville, Florida in
Oh, wow.
1977. It was the first con that I ever went to. It was at a hotel. Um,
That's,
it was a lot of fun. And then I went to one the same year in Orlando, and that's when I met my first professional artist, and
oh,
that
okay.
was C.C. Beck, the creator of Captain Marvel,
Oh, wow.
the original Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Another one that irks me that they changed it to a woman. I'm like, that's not Captain Marvel. That's Miss Marvel.
No, I'm talking about Shazam.
Oh,
That's the original Captain Marvel.
so was it because of the Marvel Comics that it changed, or it
No,
there was?
DC Comics sued Fawcett Publications over a copyright infringement, saying Captain Marvel was just a knockoff of Superman, which couldn't have been further from the truth. But by the 1950s, when comics were starting to lose their steam and Fawcett had other publications, they decided, well, it wasn't worth the fight, so they gave in
Mm,
and and then ceased publication. And then in 1971, DC Comics bought the Fawcett rights or rented or leased the Fawcett rights, so they had the option of doing Captain Marvel comics, but the copyright had lapsed in between those years, and Marvel Comics copyrighted the name.
oh, okay.
So you could call him Captain Marvel in the comics, but you couldn't have that as a title. So that's
Mm,
why they titled it Shazam.
okay.
But he
So,
was that's the original Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel outsold Superman and everybody else in the 1940s. Captain Marvel was sold bi-weekly and was selling 1 million copies.
so were you a avid reader of Captain Marvel at that time, or which superhero were you most drawn to?
When I was a kid, it was Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man were my
Mm.
favorite comic books. And the Fantastic Four.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And uh, I really I bought all of those books. Um, but I think Superman, Batman, and Amazing Spider-Man were the most consistent that I like. The FF wasn't. It wasn't the Kirby years. So
Yeah.
uh, it wasn't as consistent. When I went back and read the Kirby stuff, then it was like that's like one of my all-time favorite books.
Which I did see that you did a Batman Spider-Man crossover.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did that. And that was really cool because I got to do two of my favorite heroes,
Hmm.
and I got to do Spider-Man in the John Romita style, John Romita Sr. style. And then I got to meet him years later, a couple of years after it came out, and introduce myself, and he knew who I was and knew that piece of work, and he said he really liked it.
Oh,
And I said,
that's
"Wow,
really cool.
uh, you should, because I was trying to copy you."
Mm. That's a high compliment.
Oh
Was
yeah,
he?
I said to him, I said, I can retire. I can retire now.
Yeah. Was that I don't know, did you find like when you were first starting out you were really looking for like validation about your work, or did you know that you were just learning and you're gonna get better as time went by?
Well, you're always looking for validation, but sometimes your worst critic is you,
Hmm.
because you're comparing yourself to your heroes and your idols and all that kind of stuff. And I always felt, inadequate, probably up until I was in my 40s,
Okay.
and when I could objectively look back on the work and stuff and look at the strengths and weaknesses um, and just honestly assess it and judge it. So, but now, I'm completely comfortable and confident and when I lay something down. I know where my weaknesses are, and I try to avoid them.
Yeah. Do you, out of your characters, do you have ones that you enjoy drawing more than others, or? Do you enjoy drawing each of them equally? Because it's more about like bringing that character to life.
Yeah, I'm actually drawing something right now that's going to turn into like a large sticker that's going to be part of the campaign. And it's going to have all my characters around like the Compass Comics logo. And I'm having fun revisiting them and drawing them, you know. So yeah, it's fun to draw them, to draw all of them. It varies depending on what they're doing, you know.
And is that for like the long box or I think the comic box? Are you
It could be,
doing
yeah,
some?
you could put the sticker on that. You could put it on your computer, laptop, that type of thing. It's going to be a larger one, probably about that big.
Mm.
And it'll be a stretch goal so that when the campaign hits a certain number, then everybody gets one, you know.
Yeah, I know Aaron Lopresti did one of those too with the Empire comics.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we're always looking at people's stuff. Like I did the first one of the sketches, the layouts of the book, and he saw that, so he's doing that now, and
Mhm.
Annie's doing that. Um, and I saw his sticker, and I'm like, "Ooh, I'm gonna do that."
So you're kind of stealing from each other a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, if you find something that
Oh,
works,
influence.
yeah, yeah, it's an influence. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, which are you gonna do like the sketchbooks? Because I know like he does like the rough book where you have like all the layouts and
I've done that. Again, I was the first one to do that. I did that
oh
with
yeah.
Alien Alamo. And I don't think I'll do it on Monster Island because I changed formats on it
Mm,
midway. So I was doing the sketches right on the board, so I don't have copies of the sketches for that.
okay.
Whereas like then I realized it's not working out too well that way. So now I do them digitally and then I
Mm,
blow them up onto the board and then
mm.
ink them, traditionally.
That was gonna be one of my questions if I was about your workflow because I heard you do work tr digitally.
Hmm.
So and
But for Monster Island, since the first two books were done traditionally, I wanted the pages to match. So I'm doing this traditionally, whereas like the Shanu, Alien Alamo, all the other ones, those are all done digitally
oh,
on my
okay.
iPad.
And then right, do you have like Photoshop on your iPad or do you use like Clip Studio or
Procreate,
Procreate?
that's
Oh,
what I use. Yep.
oh, okay.
And then I imported into Photoshop to do certain things like add borders, because you can't add really nice edged borders in
Mhm.
Procreate. So I'll just bring it in, and uh, do a select and stroke, so that I get nice sharp edges on my borders.
Yes. And when you're drawing digitally, do you find that sometimes you end up getting a little too detailed, but then when you pull back, you realize that it might not be seen or
Yeah, yeah, that's a problem sometimes. Yeah,
Mhm.
you know you're pulling in, you're doing in too much, and then you realize, well, this character's only this tall, on the page.
Yeah,
I gotta, I
yeah.
gotta, I gotta look at Cubert and do the clothespin figures for those
Mhm.
things.
And do you do your layouts traditionally and then import it into in Procreate? Procreate
No, the
or
layouts I do digitally, and
okay.
then uh uh I blue line them onto the board and
Mm-hmm.
then tighten them up with pencil and then ink it traditionally.
Is that
Uh,
because you can, when you print them out, you can print them out to the size of
yeah,
the 7 by uh,
yeah,
11 by
and
17?
yeah, and I can make sure everything's where I need it. I can move figures around that are on layers and stuff so that I don't, if all of a sudden I see a tangent or somebody's head's too big or too small, I can select it and get it back to the proportions I need all in that layout stage or pencil stage, and then everything is ready to go when I'm ready to throw the ink down on it.
So, when digital artwork came, were you initially resistant to it, or did you hop on board when?
No, I was resistant to it. The Cintiqs were expensive.
Hmm.
I wasn't interested in that kind of expenditure to discover I don't like it.
Mm.
But when the iPad Pro came out with the pencil and everything, I was like, okay, I need an iPad anyway. This is a great way for me to test the waters digitally. So I started with doing my little humor strip, Sunshine State,
Oh yeah.
digitally, so that I could work it out and work out the problems, layers, and how to work with things, and basically teach myself the program too. And then when it came to the Expendables Go to Hell, there was so much reference needed for that book that I decided I'm just going to plunge in and do it completely digital so that I can, possibly use this reference. And it worked out great. And I'm like, so, okay, I'm going to do it that way now, moving forward.
So, Sunshine State, was that just to test the waters digitally, or did you have a purpose for it besides that?
Well, that strip I'd been doing since 2009.
Okay.
Uh, and even longer before that, before it was syndicated online. I've been drawing those characters since 1985, um, but finally syndicated it in 2009. Um, but I did them traditionally and then would color them in Photoshop.
Oh,
But
okay.
now I started drawing them and coloring them in Procreate. And it's so much faster. I can even, once Procreate started to do updates and stuff, now you could add text in when you couldn't do that before. So I can do all my lettering and all that stuff in there.
So you find working digitally, you move quicker than you do traditionally, or?
Hmm. On certain things, certain
Yeah.
um, layouts, maybe not so much.
Mm.
Uh, Inking definitely is faster because I'm not stopping to clean brushes or pen tips or dealing with uh, paper that might have moisture in it and is ragging out on me.
Hmm.
Um, or ink that is too thick and it's not coming off the pen tip or, that kind of stuff.
Running out.
Yeah, or running out, if I make a mistake, it's so much easier. I just double tap or I get my eraser and I erase it. I can add
Mm.
special effects in there, which is really cool.
The only
So
thing you
yeah,
have to worry about is crashes and buffering.
never have a buffer problem.
Oh,
Uh, and I've never had it crash. And
good.
even when Procreate does crash on you, it saves it as the last move you did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's just constantly saves with each move, it saves it. And the cool thing about that is it records every move you make and you can play it back as a video.
Yeah, I've been doing that with Clip Studio. I have it on my laptop, but I'm a little bit, I don't, I have like this type of tablet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I do have an iPad, but I just don't, it's an older one, so it has like the flat. Oh, so you have to draw like straight up and down.
Oh, I've
But
never seen that one.
it's like, I think it's the Generation 10.
Hmm.
I got it like refurbished because it was cheap. But
Got to save money where you can.
yeah, especially when you're on a budget.
Yes.
But
Okay, April, we're gonna have to wrap it up. I got work I gotta get to.
all right. Well, it was nice having you on. Nice
Oh,
chatting with you.
thank you. It's
And
nice chatting with you too.
I hope to learn more about your work moving forward. And you're
Excellent.
always invited back if you want to come and chat some more.
Sounds
So,
good. Sounds good. When you get
see,
the thing put together, send me the link and I'll help spread the word.
I will. It might be a few days because I go through, edit out like any like long pauses, which I don't think we really had too many this time. So I
Okay,
think
great.
this was one of the better ones.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Getting my sea legs. Eventually I'll get to streaming. But
Yo,
take care.
excellent. Okay, thanks, April. Bye bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too.